Hey guys, welcome to the Philosopher's Abyss, and today we're going to talk about evolution. Now, I don't have a lot of time for editing and stuff today, so just bear with me and I'll do the best I can. So what is evolution? Well, the American Heritage Dictionary of the English Language defines it like this. But basically it says it's a gradual change in the species that leads to a new species, and usually the new species is better than the previous species. So why is evolution important? Well, I got a couple of reasons for this. Basically, the first one is if you want to know how life came to be what it is today, evolution has the best explanation and evidence to explain why it is what it is today. The second one I find interesting is that basically scientists are doing experiments in other fields, like genetics, for example, that based off of the evolutionary theory, if they can assume the evolution theory is true, and they can, then they can draw certain conclusions about experiments they may run. And a lot of these experiments have to do with treatments or cures for cancers, slowing the aging process, things like that. And these things can greatly benefit humanity. And here's a couple other terms I want to go over. And these are also taken from the American Heritage Dictionary. And the first one is, what is a fact? And I think it's very important to know the definitions of these so that when people are talking about facts and things like that, you know what they're talking about. The second is, what is a theory? And yet again, like I said before, it's important to understand what these mean so that when people talk about facts and theories, you know the context of what they're talking about and what they mean, at least in the context of science. So here's some misconceptions of evolution. Excuse me. That I want to go over. The first one basically is if evolution is a theory, then it can't be true, and that's not accurate. That's not what theory means. All that means is that if something is a theory, it can be subjected to further testing to find out. And usually the case is more details about the information in the theory. A good example of this is gravity. Gravity is a theory, but we all know it to be true and a fact. But science likes to explore, more and more and more to find out more things about gravity, and they constantly do more experiments and stuff to find out the details of gravity and how it works and stuff like that. But they know gravity exists, it's true, and it's a fact. And the same thing with evolution. Evolution is true, it's a fact, but they're still working on the details. The second one I like to go over, and I find this one kind of amusing, is that humans came from monkeys or apes. And that's not what evolution says. Evolution doesn't say it at all. Evolution says that we all came from a common ancestor of monkeys, apes, chimps, orangutans, etc. And in fact, evolution also suggests that not only did we come from a common ancestor of primates, that we came from a common ancestor of all life, including plants. And the third one, I kind of did a two-parter there because they're sort of related, so I put them together. But the gaps in the evolutionary evidence means that it says there's gaps in the evolutionary evidence, then it's wrong, and that's not true. All that means is that science hasn't found it all yet, but they can. But with the immense amount of evidence that science has found, they can come to the conclusion safely that evolution is true, and they're still working on finding the evidence for the gaps. And the second one, that since there's gaps in the evolutionary record, therefore a creator created life, or the world, or the universe, or whatever, however you want to phrase it, and that's not what evolution says. And I kind of like to add a little note that you can believe in a creator or God and still believe evolution is true. Some people may disagree with me on this, but there's certainly nothing wrong with that. But that just because, like I said before, just because there's gaps in the evidence doesn't mean that the whole theory as a whole is wrong. So why is evolution true? And then just kind of recapping a little bit, kind of restating what I said before. And I use that term, embarrassment of riches. I heard Michael Shermer say it in a debate, but I don't think he's the one that made up the phrase. I don't know who said it first, but I'm just kind of using it in the same context that he did. That we have an embarrassment of riches, basically mean the evidence for evolution is so overwhelming that that we can safely conclude that the theory is correct. And in my note, that's what I wanted to talk about the most, is that some people think that, just like I said, since there's gaps in the evidence record, therefore the theory is flawed. And that's not true. It just means that we haven't found it yet. And what I'd like to point out here is that just because we haven't found all the evidence for the theory yet, or let me restate that. Some people like to look at the gaps in the evidence record and look at that as flaws and be like, look, there's a gap there, there's a gap there, there's a gap there, therefore the theory must be wrong. And what I like to point out is that when you're doing that, you're missing the point, you're missing the picture, you're missing the bigger picture. You got to look at the evidence is there. If you look at the evidence is there and then compare that to the gaps, the evidence outweighs the gaps by so much that it's unbelievable. So you're looking at the wrong thing. And here's a really good analogy for that.
It is like a finger pointing away to the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger or you will miss all that heavenly glory. Do you understand?
Yeah, I like that movie too. I'm a big fan of Bruce Lee. And that was from Enter the Dragon, by the way. But anyways, this has been the Philosopher's Abyss. Thank you for watching, and always remember, the only certainty is uncertainty.